or a lot of federations who have a lot of money are able to produce players because they're able to put coaches on the road and really build a good team around the players. But in Ireland, it's really not possible. Rugby's big and golf is too, and tennis is probably a minority sport.
Hey guys, welcome back to the tennis vlog and another episode of the talk show where I am joined by a special guest from the tennis world. He is the #1 player in the whole of Ireland and his name is Simon Carr with a double R. So Simon, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing and how's lockdown been for the last couple of months? Give us an idea of what life's been like.
Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me. It's great to be on. The last 2 months have been, I suppose, for everyone, a pretty crazy time, and just it was quite difficult to kind of get used to at the start. I'm sure a lot of people are kind of have their routine set up now a little bit towards kind of the new normal and stuff like that. And yeah, it's been fine. I've been able to. I'm lucky to live in a pretty secluded area where I can go out and exercise a lot, and have a big enough back garden where I can get a bit of work done. So I've been lucky. I know a lot of players haven't been as lucky as me, kind of facility wise, but yeah, I've been one of the lucky ones for sure.
And are you back playing again now? When did you get back to hitting?
Yeah, we with the Irish government, they allowed tennis and golf to be the first two sports back. So
nice.
Obviously, tennis being a tennis player, it's great to get that one. But I enjoy my golf as well, so it's nice to get out in the course a bit as well.
Yeah, of course. So we're going to be talking a bit more later on about tennis in Ireland and the scene there that people probably aren't so familiar with. Just a quick question on Ireland in general. Worldwide, there are a lot of assumptions and stereotypes about the Irish, which you're probably aware of. Which is the least accurate or the most annoying for you that you've encountered?
I don't know if the main one that we like to kind of party and drink a lot is inaccurate. I think it's pretty accurate. Just the whole thing with like the leprechauns and stuff like that, I suppose is probably not the best stereotype to get. But yeah, no, I think the generalizations of Irish people that we like to party a little bit and yeah, we like to drink. Not me, obviously, but
yeah, sure.
As a whole, I think we do.
Okay. The one that I don't get is the every time someone finds out someone's Irish, I'm not going to try the Irish accent, but they're like, "Oh, top of the morning to you," which is essentially like someone going up to an English person and finding out they're English and going, "Oh, how do you do?" It just doesn't happen, does it?
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone's ever said that to me in Ireland. That's probably one of the ones that isn't true.
Okay.
I personally, I don't think I've got a strong Irish accent, so people probably won't hear what an Irish accent is, but no, I've definitely not heard that one before when people are being serious.
Oh, it's a joke, isn't it? Let's talk tennis then. Yeah. Your background, I mean, it's not the biggest sport in Ireland, so how did you encounter tennis? What are your earliest memories of the sport? How did you start playing?
I started playing when there was kind of like group camps in my home tennis club, which is pretty close, and I just started pretty casually, just playing with my friends and stuff like that. And the older I kind of got, kind of took the hours up a little bit and started to enjoy it a lot more. I always liked the fact that it's an individual sport, and just enjoy the competition, that it's just you against your opponent kind of thing. And yeah, just pretty normal, kind of growing up playing on the regional squads and then onto the national squads and stuff like that. And one thing kind of led to another, and now I'm a professional tennis player, which I didn't think would happen this fast.
No, pretty cool though. What about your family? Was anyone else involved in tennis or sport? What was the background there?
Yeah, we've got a pretty sporty family. My dad was a Gaelic footballer, which is probably Ireland's biggest sport.
Okay.
It's a strictly just Irish sport that isn't really played anywhere else, but it's a big sport here. My brother plays golf, my sister's a triathlete, my other sister plays football, and my mum's dad was also a Gaelic footballer as well. So we've got a lot of sports in the family, and I growing up, I played basically every sport you can think of, and I chose tennis in the end.
Nice. So what age was it when you kind of decided that you really thought you could take tennis seriously and maybe even make a career out of it?
It happened pretty quickly, to be honest, because I was doing my schooling up through the ages. I was doing schooling, and there's a year where you can kind of take a year out, and I used that to play a lot of tennis. And just never really went back, to be honest. And playing the juniors and stuff like that, I always quite kind of mixed the juniors with playing futures. And kind of suddenly I found myself traveling for 25, 30 weeks a year, and just kind of went from then. It wasn't like a sit down decision. We've obviously had a lot of talks about it and stuff, but it kind of snowballed into the next kind of stage. And the older you get, I mean, you're playing the juniors from 14 onwards, and you're playing, I don't know, 15, 20 weeks a year, which is quite a lot of travel for a 14, 15-year-old. And if you're lucky enough to play the Grand Slams, like a lot of players are, they're unbelievable experiences, and they really give you good taste for what it's going to be like when you're further down the line.
Yeah, well, you did play the slams. You played in the juniors at Grand Slams. What was that experience like for you? And do you think it was beneficial heading into the seniors and into the Futures Tour, or did that make it quite a difficult transition going from the junior game into the seniors?
Yeah, the juniors were unbelievable. I mean, you'd never, if I hadn't played juniors, I'd have never been to a Grand Slam. I've never seen that, the way the players kind of practice and the way they go about their routines and their matches and all that sort of stuff. And if I hadn't, it was an unbelievable experience. I don't think I could have bought an experience better than that. That it just shows you that they're real. I mean, if that makes sense, because you watch them on TV so many times, and it's not nearly like a different world. And then you go there, and it's actually real, you know. So that was an unbelievable experience to be able to do that.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I know you've played one or two challenger events, which are the next step up from the ITF tour, but you mainly compete at ITF level at the moment. You've been there, I think, for a couple of years. You're 20 now. How does it compare to what you expected ahead of time? And did you feel adequately prepared going into it? Because the ITF has hit a lot of headlines mainstream recently, probably better late than never. About, you know, how tough it is and how many struggles the players have had at that level. So did you feel prepared, and how did it compare to the expectations you had for it?
Yeah, I originally, coming out of juniors, I struggled with the change into the futures and the pro game. Obviously, it depends on, with regard to the ITF and the tournaments and the futures, it depends on where you go. There are a lot of nice futures where you're treated really well, and there are a lot of not so nice ones where you're treated kind of like a tourist, and they're just trying to get money out of you and stuff. And it depends. I mean, it depends in which way you look at it. If you're looking at it in the way that you're using it as a stepping stone, you're probably not trying to be in them for that long. I have played a few challengers as well, and they're obviously a bit nicer, but you're still not really feeling like you're that big of a deal or actually a professional tennis player, because obviously you do feel it more when you're playing challengers, because you're playing in decent sized courts and the people come and watch and stuff. But there's a lot of futures that the conditions are really, really bad, and there's no one watching. You're out on court 10 and you're traveling alone, and it's really difficult to kind of pull through that. But you kind of have to remember that hopefully it's only going to be a phase of your career, and every player goes through it.
Yeah. When you've come through that stage and you're looking back, is there any particular situation or incident that stands out to you as kind of a horror story that you'll tell to friends and stuff further down the line?
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, probably one of my toughest years was my first year out of juniors, and I was traveling alone. I was in Africa a little bit, and I was losing quite a lot. Lost a few first rounds in a row, and it's really difficult going back to a hotel room on your own when you've lost a couple of first rounds in a row, and kind of thinking where to next, because you're alone with your thoughts, and you can really kind of get down on yourself. And that year was probably a big learning curve for me to realize that it is a really tough thing to get out of, is the futures, because there's so many good players. There's so much depth in the futures. I know there's 15s and 25, but even in the 15s, there's so many good players, you know, and that was probably one of the biggest learning curves I had, was that there are so many good players. And because when you're playing juniors, you're obviously going from playing in these slams, and nice tournaments to kind of going out into the middle of nowhere in Africa and playing kind of with no one watching it. It's a bit of a reality check.
Yeah, sure. So what would you say is the most difficult aspect to cope with when playing on the ITF tour? Is it the mental aspects? Is it the hard graft, or the constant traveling? What's the toughest thing to deal with?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. That to climb the rankings, you have to play a lot of tournaments. So that means you're playing 30 plus weeks a year, which is really difficult to do. It's really tough to kind of get yourself motivated and up to play week after week after week, especially when the results aren't good.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if you're lucky enough to travel with someone, it's a lot better. But when you're traveling on your own, it's really tough. As I said before, you're alone with your thoughts, and you can really get down on yourself if you have a bad stretch. Yeah, just the fact that there's so many good players, and you could on paper be playing a guy who's not as well ranked as you, but then he comes out really hot the next day and has a really good day, and that could be your week over, and you're kind of like, well, what happened there?
Yeah.
Sort of thing. And just the fact that it's so there's so many variables, and it's on such a, it can go either way at any stage, because everyone is actually quite similar level wise, and that's probably one of the toughest things I'd say about it.
Sure. I mean, I've spent a lot of time around the ITF tour, and the talent 100% is there. It's just the consistency is not quite there.
Yeah.
So like you say, you can walk out any given day and you can play a guy who's competing as if he's like top 20, top 30 in the world. That's a real possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, looking back at the matches you've had so far, is there a moment where maybe you were quite down, and what's the sort of thing that can happen to give you that energy boost and to push you to keep going, if you had a moment like that so far?
Yeah, there's been a few moments where kind of losses hit you harder than other losses do. I'd probably say it was one time in Israel, when I was in in Spain,
Okay.
where I was playing for a while and my results weren't very good, and I ended up getting injured after that, and I was out for a couple of months, which obviously gives you a lot of time to think and a lot of time to kind of reevaluate and stuff, and that kind of turned it around for me a little bit, because I kind of realized that the more pressure you put on yourself, and it's difficult not to put the pressure on yourself, because at the end of the day, it's your job and it's what you're doing full time.
Yeah, of
So
course.
it's difficult not to put pressure on yourself, but trying to enjoy it as much as possible and make it as fun as possible is kind of one of the main goals for me now, because I spent a lot of time putting a lot of pressure on myself and being in some tough places.
Well, let's have a look at tennis within Ireland then a bit now, because I mean, personally myself, until I started thinking more about it a couple of weeks ago, don't know much about the tennis scene in Ireland at all. I guess people globally, there are probably still some people that think it's part of the UK, so they haven't thought too much about it. But, you know, it's a nation in its own right. You've had good players in the past. I'm thinking Conor Nyland, who I believe is Davis Cup captain at the moment, had a career high, number 1 through 9. James McGee, the man, the myth, the McGee. He got top 150, played the slams. But you're top ranked at the moment in the whole country, men or women. You're just outside the top 500. I believe there are 3 ATP ranked men currently and 2 ranked players WTA on the women's side. I mean, I guess the place to start is, where does tennis rank in terms of popularity among sports in Ireland, would you say?
Yeah. Well, as I was saying earlier, the main sports in Ireland are like a Gaelic football or hurling, or rugby's big, and golf is too, and tennis is probably a minority sport. Don't get that funding from the sports council, all that sort of thing, and it's difficult to kind of produce players without that much funding and that much popularity. I know that a lot of countries who or a lot of federations who have a lot of money are able to produce players because they're able to put coaches on the road and really build a good team around the players. But in Ireland, it's really not possible because there is no money in the sport. I know that there are a lot of good players, but through the years haven't been able to really push forward because of reasons like that. And it's just I suppose it's the lack of number of players, because if you have a group of, say, if Ireland had a group of 10 players, it would be a lot easier for one of them or two of them to break through than if there's a group of like 2 players, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because with the law of numbers or whatever, you have a lot higher chance of doing that. I just think that we play predominantly on AstroTurf as well.
Okay.
That's our national surface, which obviously, if anyone playing tennis is watching, it's a terrible surface because it's so fast. And the reason we have that is because it rains so much here that you can play in it when it's wet. And there's a good few problems, but hopefully there's an Irish tennis player that's gonna break through soon. Hopefully it's me.
Yeah, well, maybe it will be you. So how did this situation affect you? Because you're trying to break through the ranks now, but were there ever moments when you thought the situation in Ireland, could hold you back?
Well, right now it's a bit of a tricky kind of time because I'm 5:30 would be kind of on the edge of challengers. I can sneak into a challenger one week, and I'm in futures main draws every week, which is it's decent to plan. But the difficult thing about that is you can't really plan, because if you get into a challenger, obviously you're going to want to play the challenger. And with the situation here, Irish tennis wise, it would be nice if the federation were to put on some kind of tour or there's tournaments around and stuff that we could kind of stay match tight. But it's really difficult to see that happen in kind of short term. And I'm not sure what other countries are like, because obviously I don't live there, but I know that Irish tennis is going to struggle over the next while, because there is going to be a lack of, short term wise, during the coronavirus time, it's going to struggle because there's a lack of surfaces to play tournaments on. And there's obviously, with only 3 of us being ranked and a few other players playing, it's going to be difficult to get the competition you need to kind of improve a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting within tennis, so many players, wherever they're from in the world, end up traveling in order to have a base somewhere else, and to generally in hotter, sunnier countries. And just as you were saying there, it crossed my mind, because similar situation really in England, in that the weather is not great tennis weather. And like you say, in Ireland, if you don't have the facilities, that does make things harder. So for you and for other players over there, was that ever even an option to be based elsewhere and train abroad?
Yeah, it's obviously, with, as I said before, the lack of players to practice with is a big problem here. I never went away for that long because I had a decent setup. I was able to train with with Sam Barry when I was younger, who obviously got to 250 in the world and was a really good player. So that really helped me when I was growing up. So I didn't really need, obviously Sam wasn't there full time, but because he was traveling, but I didn't really need at the time to go away, and I was doing a lot of work with my coach here. So but definitely in the near future, I'm looking to do something like that, because it's difficult being the highest ranked player. I don't have anyone hired me to practice with here, which I think is key to be able to improve. And that's definitely something I'm going to look at. And I'd encourage anyone, if they're younger than me or juniors or something, to look to playing with better players, because it's the only way you're going to get to their level and improve.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's a really good point. So, looking at the situation in Ireland, you said, it's difficult with the times of the coronavirus. Everyone's really struggling, but for nations like Ireland that don't have the support of, say, the UK, and all the money the LTA is putting into things over here, it is more of a worrying situation. So what do you think can be done in future to kind of raise the profile of tennis in Ireland? Because I remember while I was looking at this, I wasn't alive at the time, but years back they had the Irish Open in Ireland, which I believe Rod Laver won. So you had big name players coming into the country. Is that the sort of thing that they should look at doing, trying to bring these higher level events into Ireland? Because I don't think you've got anything higher than a futures level event, right?
Yeah, I remember someone telling me that was like a lead up event to Wimbledon, I think. So that was one of the bigger tournaments. Obviously it would be unbelievable to have even a challenger. I know there was a little bit of talk about a challenger being on grass after Wimbledon, but that hasn't really materialized. A tournament like that would really grow the profile in Ireland, I think, because, as you said, the highest level tournament we have is a 15 for women and 25 for men, which is on the same week, which is a really well run tournament. But I think that if they kind of cut down the cost a little bit and made it a higher kind of ranking point prize money event, that it would really grow the profile. Because we don't have exposure to top 100 players in Ireland, and you can't really be what you can't see, because it's so, you need to be able to kind of measure yourself against players like that, and without that it's really difficult.
I was looking at some of your previous results. You had a good run, I believe, at the last time there was a Futures in Ireland. I think you made semis. Is that correct? And gave Igor Scheisling a run for his money in that one, by the looks of it. Do you find that playing at home, in the rare occasions that you're able to, I know the atmosphere is different at an ITF event, but just the thought of, playing in your home country, and maybe even being able to, stay at home and not have to be in one of these Manc hotels elsewhere, does that motivate you to actually play better? And do you feel more at ease when you're playing in Ireland?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite weeks every year, even though it's played on AstroTurf, which really doesn't suit my game very well. I always enjoy playing. It's really nice to play in front of a home crowd, and as I said before, they do the tournament really well. It's a really well-run tournament. There's a stand-up, and it's a little bit like a challenger, which is why it would be great if they could make it into a challenger. But playing at home is one of my favorite things. It's my favorite week of the year, and it's just nice not to have to travel. I stay with my uncle. I live about an hour from Dublin, and it's really nice for once a year to be able to do that.
Yeah, and saving money and stuff as well, because at the ITF levels, you have to think about all these things, saving time, saving money. And I guess with the pressures of the tour, it probably is just more comfortable to almost relax a bit, even when you're competing, when you're at home. So, with the status of tennis in the country, obviously you didn't have any kind of Roger Federer-like player in Ireland. I mean, you have had players that have had good success that deserve credit, but I guess no one of that status. So how did that affect you growing up, and did you limit yourself because of the situation over there, or did you have more ambition to go further and be that player that kind of broke through for the country?
Yeah, when I was growing up, we had a few good players who were kind of breaking through and qualifying into slams. I know Conor Nyland lost in 5 sets to Manarino, and if he won, he would have played Federer on centre court. So that would have been huge. And all those guys, McGee, Sam, Luke Sorensen, they did unbelievably well, and kind of competing at challengers and qualifying into slams and stuff. And that was really motivating for me to be able to see that players are actually doing that, and how high they can get. Obviously, it's a huge motivational factor for me that there has been no Irish players who've really broken through, and it would obviously be incredible to be the first one, and that's what I'm working towards.
Yeah. So do you have solid long-term goals then that you can put out there and say this is what I'm going for long-term, or do you prefer to set shorter goals and then kind of take it step by step?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I think obviously every player wants to be top 100 or be top 50 and playing kind of slams every week, playing the tour week in, week out. Short term wise, I think it's difficult to look past, the next tournament and a couple of weeks ahead of yourself, because there are so many kind of obstacles you go through. Every single week you play a tournament, and you're just trying to take it kind of week by week, because you don't want to look too far ahead at the rankings or cutoffs or all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I think it's a mix of both, and the mix of both kind of keep you focused on what you're working towards long term, and kind of staying focused about your short term goals and being in the moment and all that sort of stuff.
Well, for the moment, we can't really look too far ahead at goals for tournaments, because there's no tennis right now and we don't know when it will come back. So do you have plans for the next few months, or are you literally just taking each day as it comes?
Not particularly, to be honest. We just got back playing tennis and golf, so that's kind of filling up my whole day, and it's really tough because we don't have any idea. I don't think the ATP or the ITF are going to make a decision long term. They're going to kind of keep pushing out a couple of weeks at a time and a month at a time, all that sort of thing. And it's going to be difficult to make a plan and set a plan in stone, because if they're doing that, which they're obviously right to do it to give it the best chance of playing again, but it's just difficult. It would be a lot easier if they said, look, there's not going to be tennis till 2021. You can really make a structured plan for what you're going to do for the next 7 months until you're going to be playing tennis again. Just taking a couple of weeks at a time. We have kind of a phased reopening of society here, and that phase 2 started, or phase 1 started on Monday, and phase 2 is in 3 weeks time. So we're all kind of looking forward to the easing of restrictions and stuff like that, to see what we're going to be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all the best to you, because like you say,
Yeah.
it is a difficult time when no one really knows what's coming. And
Yeah,
for
exactly.
players who are so used to a routine and traveling, and you don't really usually have to think about this sort of thing because you're living at tournaments, right? It's next tournament,
Yeah,
next
yeah,
tournament, and this is a unique situation. But is it nice to have that family time and just kind of, because you wouldn't really see your parents, I guess, when you're on the road?
yeah, yeah. I was saying to someone the other day that I don't think I've been home for this long since I was like 14 years old,
Wow.
which is like it's really nice, to be honest. I'm just trying to savor it as much as I can, because there will be days when we're back on the tour that we're going to kind of be wishing we were home. Everyone has those days, obviously, but it's really nice to be home. My whole family's here, apart from my brother. He's in America right now, and he would normally be the one who is at home. So it's kind of a strange turn of events, but it's great to be able to spend this amount of time with your family. Obviously, when you're on the tour and stuff, you're coming home for a couple of days at a time, and you can't really do much with them. But yeah, I just think that it's an unbelievable opportunity, because we're never going to get a chance like this again in our careers, to be able to kind of sit back and kind of take stock of what's going on, and it basically just pause from life, you know.
Yeah, that's a really good mentality to have, because I think it's in human nature to kind of always want what you don't have. And I guess you don't
Yeah,
really appreciate things till it's gone. But like you say, it's important to remember, these are the days that people will want back, when they're back at work and when they don't have this time to chill out and to spend with the people they care about. So good on
yeah.
you for taking it like that. And like I say, all the best for the next 2 weeks, and for when tennis gets going again. Let's hope it's sooner rather than later. I think we're probably looking at
Absolutely.
2021, but I'll look forward
Yeah,
to being back on the circuit, and maybe cross paths at a few futures challenges, and potentially the slams in future as well. So
nice
thanks
one.
for coming on,
Hopefully.
Simon. Great to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks to everyone for watching, and if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, do that now so that you don't miss any future videos, and I will see you next time.